so we now have everything kind of ready for us to set up the nose block on this airplane. Before I get to that, I do want to point out one thing. On the wing trailing edge, I put some plywood reinforcing in here. This way when I put really strong rubber bands down, they won't cut into the trailing edge of the wing. Back to the nose block. You are supplied with a plywood nose plate. We'll go ahead and pop this guy loose so you can have a look at this. This is a really good idea, and I have done this on large models in the past. Probably should do it more often than I do. But let me pop the burrs out here. Anyway, this guy mounts right onto the front of the fuselage, and it just provides a nice area pressure plate for the nose block to spread out all the load. And on a high-powered airplane, it's a good idea. Keeps the nose from splitting apart and doing naughty things and all that such like. And maybe we'll get some glue out. There we go. Now, in an ideal world, and I haven't done it and probably should have, in an ideal world you would have two of these. You would have one with a cutout for the nose key to go through, and you would have another one to form as the back of your nose block. Unfortunately, I don't have one. Or do I? I have plywood that lives here. So, we're going to set this guy down.
Here's a picture of an airplane.
And now we will use scissors to cut this out because I'm lazy. That's a little oversized, but nothing sandpaper can't take care of. Now, your nose key is this little piece of 1/8 balsa. That's not thick enough. It's just not thick enough. You can't do that. So I cut a piece of 1/4 inch balsa to go on that. And so we'll make all that fit together. The reason that's not thick enough is this is too small, not enough that if the nose block shifts forward because of a knot releasing or vibration or whatever in the drive system, so the nose block could very easily go flying forward, come unlatched from everything, and then you have a real mess. I'm going to save the piece of plywood that came from the center here and use it to face the back of my nose key. So let's set that on there. positive fit there. Now I'm actually going to round off the top of this a little bit. There's a purpose for that. This permits, should your airplane hit the ground really hard, the nose block can rotate forward so you don't break your propeller off or something like that. Now I cut like I said, I cut that other piece of plywood right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to put glue on here, on this nose block. Nose key, sorry. Use of proper terms. And there we go. Now, I went ahead and carved a block for, my nose block, because the supplied nose block was too small. And all I'm going to do is glue that onto that plywood face. Now, I have one really sweet nose assembly here. It's in, rotates out most of the way, not entirely. That can be dealt with later though. And now I just can sand this down the rest of the way, which I'm not going to bore you with on camera. Okay, it's time for us to make us some wheels. So I have cut two rectangular squares of 3/16 inch balsa, which is, I guess, about right for this. This may not go well, but I'm going to make a shot at it. It's probably going to go poorly. So I have a piece of 3/32 brass tubing, and not nearly enough CA. And sometimes this works out well for me, and sometimes not. The bottom line is, gluing these into, well, I'm gluing them one at a time. Let's slide this back a little ways. I don't want to have much of an opportunity to just vibrate around and be stupid. Always clean all that off later, at least to some extent, enough to make it not look awful. Now we find out how badly it's going to embarrass me on camera. That bad. That's how bad. a very nice looking wheel. Now, to clean the wheel up. There we go. A little frustrating to get there, but I have a wheel. So we pop the wheel loose, do a wee bit more cleanup. Look at how pretty that profile is. And now we will take a piece of 3/32 aluminum tubing, and now we'll break off one more piece. Maybe two. And now we will squirt glue in the second piece. Close enough. Bingo. That's one wheel. Okay, so we've got our nose block here. We're up in my attic, and we want to drill this for a couple of degrees of down and right thrust. So, got a drill press right here. really noisy, awful old one, but it works, so I guess maybe it's not so awful. So if I set this nose block here and drill straight through, everything's parallel. On the other hand, I want my bearing to angle so the prop shaft comes out like this. So I want some down thrust and I want some right thrust. So in order to do that, I'm going to put a shim under this corner because this is the top. So I'm putting a 1/16 inch shim under there. That brings me through about dead center. Right about there. I do not have a drill bit that is the correct size for my nose bearing here, so I'm going to use this end mill that is the right diameter because it's literally what I've got. Here's what we have. I'm debating not staying with that bearing. I don't really like how much it sticks out. It looks kind of ugly. So it's a fine bearing. There's nothing wrong with it. It'll work, but I don't like the look of it. So I've got enough clearance in there. Maybe able to resort to something a little bit different. We'll see. Okay, so since you last saw the Gipsy, it suddenly has this glorious fan on the front of it. Now, for those of you, and I still haven't balanced it yet, oh well, for those of you wondering, hey, where'd that come from? That's not the little bitty plastic thing that was in the kit. Check the link below for the prop carving video that shows how to make that, and the awesome clutch on it, and all the cool stuff there. Separate video because that's a subject unto itself, and it's not a short video. But the bottom line is we have pretty much complete airplane sitting here. I sheeted in right here because I'm going to put a dethermalizer timer of some sort on that. I have not decided exactly which one I'm going to use. I'd like to go electronic, but probably won't. I do need to route a tube down a piece of aluminum tubing down from the top of my horizontal stabilizer down, and then be able to, that will exit underneath, and that way I can run a line up here to my timer. So still need to do that. I would do it now, but I don't know where my aluminum tubing is, so there's that. Then after that, we're ready to start covering the airplane. So very straightforward at this point. You need to make some decisions on a plane this size as to what you're going to cover it with. So I'm going to stick kind of with tissue since the kit is with that, and I still want this to be somewhat of a review of the kit. That being said, 1/4 mil Mylar with something over the top of it. Even some of the park light coverings, I think it's park light, has there's some really light covering you can, plastic covering you can use that's self-adhesive that would work on this airplane just fine. However, I would not cover the fuselage with it, and in fact I'm not going to cover the fuselage with tissue. I'm going to cover it with something called polyspan. The reason I want to use polyspan on there is it's much stronger than tissue. I've got a little more of a weight budget on this airplane, so I can kind of afford that. So I guess the next thing we'll show is playing around with covering material. I may show drilling out that thing for the stab mount. And also, if I'm going to do that, I should probably do this right. I should probably consider putting a little screw adjuster in there for an incident screw. So we'll show that next. We have got the propeller varnished. I did get one thing screwed up already. I said that was an 18-inch prop. Never trust your memory. The original plans call for a 17-inch prop, so I had to cut on the ends of the blades. Oh well. We said we were going to do one thing before covering, and that is to set up an adjustable tail mount. So, first of all, I am going to, if I can find a scrap of plywood right in front of the face, scissors. So I'm going to cut into this, and so there we go. I have this come forward a little bit because our rudder doesn't come all the way down through there. So I'm going to glue this piece of plywood to the bottom of the stab here. Now, I have this plate, but I'm going to have to drill a hole through that to route my dethermalizer line. Now, before I do that, I want to go ahead and drill a hole in here to route that dethermalizer line through the fuselage. Basically, I think I'm going to drill that all the way down through here, hopefully part way out the side. Come on, you can do it. Not quite how the direction I wanted it to go, but that's okay. We'll get it to work. Okay, so that's got that. Now I'm going to take a piece of 1/16 inch aluminum tubing. And that's going to slide down through there like that. Before I do that though, I really do want to curve this hole forward. There we go. Now, last thing I'll do, that way I can sand it off flush with the bottom here. That does not have to be attached at the moment anyway, and it's truly beginning to get in my way. Right. That's sticking out a little bit too far. Also, aluminum tubing is a major conductor of heat. I almost burned myself. And now we will pull in some glue there, and that gets our DT line secure. Dropping everything, as is my usual course of action. So we want to have our incident screw just up ahead of that. So we're going to drill another hole. And then we are going to take this is a 440. I've got to go find a 256 screw. Alright, here's my 256 screw. I have coated the threads with Vaseline. Alright, so we've got this guy in here, and now I'm going to need a screwdriver to get it out. There we go, screwdriver. So what we've done is, since I don't have a tap this size, we have effectively created our own out of a screw. So now this thing is tapped. Now, the one thing I didn't think about before I did this is that I need to carve a relief in here. And that way I have my screw able to be countersunk down in here. There we go. So now, get myself a 256 sized nylon screw. Cut it off nice and short. the way down in here. Flush with the surrounding surface, and now I have my tube in the back, have the nylon bolt up ahead, and then the last thing is that we'll have to mark this to receive the DT line that'll come through here. Make sure we're dead center. Now I have a hole coming through here that I can run my DT line up to the top and it can hook in. So I'll have a removable tail that's fitted for DT. I have an incidence screw that allows me to set an angle of incidence on the stabilizer. The only thing I'm really lacking is if I had been smart enough to put a similar thing onto the vertical tail so I could have a rudder adjustment. But who knows, maybe we'll get creative with that too. That part remains to be seen, because there's a neat way that you can put a tab into your rudder and then put an adjusting screw on that as well. Sorry, your vertical stab, and then put an adjusting screw onto a tab for that as well. Another way to do it actually would be to tap into one of these sub fins and do that. By the way, those are not glued in, nor will they ever be. There will be some fittings for that. Same as the vertical tail, it's going to be removable, so everything packs down flat for storage. So with that, we are done with all the mechanicals, other than stuff that can't be applied until after the dethermalizer is put in. So I'm going to take this airplane apart to do this next step, but I'm going to go ahead and show before that. This is a chemical called balsa-rite. It is no longer available. It was made by the Coverite company. They went out with the whole Hobbyco thing, so they're gone. But this stuff you can still find around. Mine had pretty much dried up, so I got out some lacquer thinner and did that with it. Used lacquer thinner to revitalize it, and now you just smear that on here, and my can has got rust on the inside of it, so there's some crud in there, so it does not look great. But basically, we're going to brush that all over this structure, and basically we use this the same way you would use nitrate dope or something like that. I just find that this is a chemical I prefer a little more. And the reason I prefer it a little more is balsa-rite is heat activated as well as solvent activated. So I can go around here and use a hot iron to get stuff to stick down just as well as I could use anything else. But we are going to seal all the externals of the structure with this stuff, and so I will come back after we've completed all of that. So we've got everything sealed. I have not sanded it because I want to kind of leave that material well exposed that I put on there. This is polyspan. I'm going to use that to cover the fuselage, or at least as much of it as I can. Got a piece here I've cut roughly the size for a segment of the fuselage. And we're going to attempt to attach this down, not attempt, we are going to. with some thinned dope. Do this with a little bit of, adequate ventilation and whatnot, because it does have fumes. This is heavily thinned butyrate dope, so basically all we're doing is we're going around and we are using this to soften the adhesive, reactivate it, however you want to call it. And as we're doing it, we're spreading that dope into the covering so that we can start the process of sealing it as well. Polyspan is a highly porous material, and so you want to ensure that it is sealed, because if it's not, it actually contributes a shocking amount of drag to the airframe. So you want to eliminate that porous nature as much as possible. Now up here in the window area, all I'm doing is I'm just using the polyspan to cover the balsa, and the reason for that is I'm going to paint this airplane in some way, shape, or form, and I want a consistent finish all over it. And then the windows will actually be added afterwards. Now the other thing about this polyspan is once it is applied, it can be heat shrunk because it is plastic. The catch is it doesn't heat shrink a whole lot, so you need to have a pretty decent covering job to start with. And then after that you can heat shrink it. I'm going to go ahead and start smearing a little bit of dope out over the rest of the surface here. There is nothing particularly educational about any of this, so I'm going to come back after all the rest of the fuselage is covered except for the top decking on the nose, because that we will handle carefully, to say the least. I'm going to try to do it in polyspan, but I may end up having to rip the polyspan off and do it in tissue, so that's where it gets fun, because there's a semi-compound curve there. So we have fuselage covered here. So moving on to next thing is the decking right here at the middle, or on the nose, whatever, something like that. So I'm going to try using heat to solve my problem. at this point, we have really nice smooth covering. I'm going to trim this to size, and then I'm going to cover this area with a separate piece, and we'll curl it all over, and it'll be pretty. Okay, so back outside to cover the wing, in part because I've got my my building buddy out here. So we're going to dope the tissue onto the wing. The rest of the airplane is frankly kind of yawn-worthy on all that, and is in fact completely covered. I think that, actually no, the sub-fin, the center line sub-fin is not done yet, but everything else is. Doped tissue on both sides of these guys, and they'll get a squirt of paint. But anyway, and that's a long wing panel for that. And I think that my next one's going to be even worse, but I will probably cover it in plastic, so there's that. But let's see if we can get this guy on here. You need to see what I'm doing rather than bothering with my face. Who wants to look at my face? My wife is polite and says she does, but I mean, really. Alright, so this is thinned butyrite dope, as we've said before. I'm going to use that to soften the undercoating material, as well as hopefully not having my child break the plane, because he and the cat are having a moment. And Reese, you're egging him on. Must you? I guess she must. But you want to stretch this tissue out a little bit here. Now, on a lighter structure, you would want to avoid that. And the reason for that is it's going to shrink and it'll warp the structure. This, however, is not some itsy-bitsy, wimpy little plane. So, we want a nice, tight covering job. Unfortunately, that is not sticking down like it ought to. May have to hit it with a covering iron at some point. Now, with the horizontal stab, I made a mistake. I doped all of it before I water shrunk it, and so now it's got the snake skin thing because it's refusing to shrink all the way. That was kind of a dumb move on my part. So we're rocking and rolling this way. That is not one. I think I need to thin this stuff out. I think too much of my acetone has evaporated out of it. So we're getting a good doping job on the tissue, but we're not getting good adhesion. So I'm going to go inside and get, yeah, that's getting too syrupy. Alright. Yeah, that's a little better. Alright, so we covered the bottom of the wing. I've not stuck everything down all the way out here, no biggie. This is a piece I've roughly cut to size for the top of the wing, and then we need to do kind of a loose curve in here to account for the center dihedral break. So this is something that you can just kind of eyeball. It does not have to be perfect by any means. That was actually probably too much. Yep, and that's okay, because it'll still work. It's not going to line up quite perfectly, but it'll be good enough. So we'll start at the wing spar. down here because it's not stuck down all the way. So we've got it mostly adhered up here pretty good. I did have to make sure, I had to check for a wing warp. I had the wing twisting like this. Tension the tissue on to mitigate that. And so now what we do is we take the actual thinned dope and start smearing it on here and use that to tack this tissue down, because I've cut it out oversized all the way around. And now you can overlap it down like that, and on it goes. And yes, you do end up with this stuff all over your fingers. It does clean off with acetone. And there we have it, all curled around here. I did have a little bit where I had to shoehorn some extra scrap of tissue in there, but there's the wing all covered. We'll spray it with water, and it'll tighten up real nice. I'll give it a coat of dope, and it'll be ready to go. So just got to repeat that on the other side. Okay, so we've got this airplane covered now. I sprayed a little bit of red paint on some of the flying surfaces. Painted some pretty colors on the stab. The fuselage has also been painted to cover up some of the ugly that was showing through from some of that rust that carried over from the Coverite container. Lessons learned. Wing is done, and I gave it a little bit of paint because I guess it's too dry or something, and the dope was blushing, which was leaving this ugly white residue. Actually, you can see a little bit of it on my stab right there if you look just right. It looks okay on camera, it looks horrible in person. And that's showing through the paint, so that should give you an idea of how bad it really is. The bottom line is, I've got that done. The airplane's pretty much ready to fly. I need to install a rear peg. I've got an aluminum tube here to mount my stab. I don't have a rear attachment for this rubber band yet. We'll have to work on that. Nor do I have anything holding my vertical stab in, and it's fairly tight right now, but it's going to loosen up over time, and so I need something on there for when my dethermalizer deploys up forward to keep the rudder from getting pushed out of the stab, and I lose everything. Don't have a dethermalizer mounted yet, just have a hookup here to retain that rubber band. Windshield is mounted. I used super glue to mount the windshield, and it's secure enough. I have my rear wing hold downs, now I need to do the front ones. You can see there is a block of wood across here, so I want to mount this peg underneath that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that right now by cutting a little hole in my windshield on either side. Does that fit? Yes, it does. So now I just have to do it on the other side of the airplane. There we go. That'll fit in place. Now I'm going to run some CA in there to ensure that that stays put, because I just don't want that coming out. there we go. I'm going to harden that up with accelerator. Now we can lay our wing on here. As you see the airplane now, it is finished out, ready to fly. The reality is I'm actually filming this 1.5 videos into the future, so the airplane's actually partially trimmed as you see it here, maybe even mostly trimmed. So I've got impatient, got out, recorded some initial videos on trimming and all that, and flew it some, etc. Here's the bottom line, is that in a review of this airplane, the flight characteristics are not really a major component. This airplane was designed in 1946 by Bill Dean, was kitted by Killcraft, have been thousands and thousands of kits for this airplane have been sold over the years. Ripmax acquired the rights and has been producing them since then. And actually, I think the design's actually semi-open source, because there are some other outfits who produce some of the Killcraft designs. I think at one point even including the Gipsy, so it's kind of gray area. I mean, they're old designs and have been out there for a long time. This is a proven airplane. I've never heard anyone speak ill of it in terms of flight characteristics or performance. It's not going to be one of like your ultimate extreme Wakefield performers. If you put it up against the Pt.2, which is a kit we offer, probably it's not going to equal out in ultimate dead air performance, but that's not really the point. The point is, this is a very good solid beginners, even to intermediate competition airplane from that era, and nowadays it's great for old-time Wakefield competition, and I would not feel at a disadvantage flying this airplane in one of those competitions. In terms of modern free flight competition, you're going to be at a disadvantage because it's an old, heavy airplane. Not even particularly heavy. I did build this one kind of heavy. It's about a little over 4 ounces without rubber. Actually, no, about 4.5 ounces, because it came out somewhere in the, it's a little over 110 grams without rubber. 4 ounces, there we go. So, not a bad weight for a kit-built airplane that I painted. I mean, I did not try to save weight on this airplane. The CG marked on the plans, as you'll find out later, is wrong. However, I don't fault that, because that CG I checked on the original plans. It also shows that, and it just gives you a very, very nose-heavy airplane that you would have to crank a bunch of up elevator in to get that to work. And like I said, I don't fault Ripmax for that. Quality of the kit is excellent. The materials are excellent. There were a few missing sticks and the wrong size nose block. That said, if you got a kit and had those issues, I am confident that they would replace those components with the correct ones. We did not use the kit supplied plastic propeller, so obviously that enhances the performance quite a bit, because the propeller is a major factor. That being said, I have no concern as to whether this airplane would fly with a plastic propeller. It would fly just fine. Flight times wouldn't be as long, but if you're looking for a sport flyer, it'd be excellent. If you buy one of these and you want a propeller and don't want to go through the full carving procedure, link in the description for the full carving procedure, full-length video on this. Pt.2 has a 17-inch propeller that would work very well with this airplane. It's the right pitch diameter ratio. It'd be excellent. The rubber included in the kit is not exceptionally high quality. I have tested that rubber when we did the Gipsy review with Hope's airplane, and her plane flew just fine on that. not as high performance, but in terms of getting a few nice circuits around, flight times around a minute, it's gracious plenty. So again, out of the box, the airplane flies great. It's a good quality kit. I highly recommend it. And I want to thank Ripmax for giving us the opportunity to review an airplane that, frankly, I've been wanting one of these since I was a kid, and I finally have it. And it did not disappoint in any way. Frankly, having flown it now, it exceeded my expectations. I think this is going to be a plane I'm going to get a lot of enjoyment flying, and I wish that I had gotten around to getting one of these even on my own long before this. So with that, we're done reviewing the Killcraft Gipsy. There will be 2 more videos on this airplane, one on flight setup, sorry, 3 more videos, one on flight setup, one on flight trimming, and one on installing the dethermalizer for this airplane. It does not currently have its dethermalizer installed, and so we need to get around to that eventually, because if you're going to have one of these, you should do the things necessary to keep it around. And it's very inexpensive and very straightforward. If you can build the airplane, you can build the dethermalizer. So I hope to see you out on the field flying awesome planes like this one, hopefully even flying one of these, and we'll see you around. Hi, I'm Josh Finn. This is Hope. We are J&H Aerospace.
If you like this video, hit the like button.
Also, how about subscribe to our channel and check out jhaerospace.com for new free flight products and all of the tooling that you'll need to build them.
Thanks for watching.